You know, every single day we're surrounded by these incredible, invisible systems that keep us safe. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most important ones of all, the secret system that guards every single meal you eat. Let's dig in.
So let me ask you a question. What's lurking in your lunch? It's a question you probably don't even think about, right? Because you trust that your food is safe. But how can we be so sure? What are the dangers that are being stopped before they ever get a chance to reach your plate? All right, before we meet the hero of our story, we first need to understand the villains. See, food safety is really all about finding and controlling three main types of hazards. First up, you've got your biological hazards. Now, these are the microscopic troublemakers you hear about on the news. I'm talking about bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli, plus viruses and molds that can make you seriously sick. They're the invisible invaders.
Then we've got chemical hazards, and this can be anything from tiny amounts of pesticide left on fruits and veggies to cleaning chemicals that weren't rinsed off properly. It even includes things like food allergens that weren't listed on the label.
And finally, there's the physical hazards. This is the stuff you definitely don't want to find in your food. We're talking about tiny bits of glass, metal, plastic, even little stones, things that just should not be there.
So with all these different dangers, how in the world do we fight them? Well, we don't do it by waiting around for something to go wrong. We do it with a brilliant, proactive plan designed to stop these dangers right in their tracks. And that plan has a name: HACCP.
HACCP. It stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. And it's not just a good idea, it's a scientific, systematic approach that's recognized all over the globe. In fact, it's the foundation for major food safety standards like ISO 22000. It is the global gold standard.
Now, what's so cool about HACCP is how it completely flipped the script on food safety. The old way, it was reactive. You'd make a bunch of food, test a little sample at the very end, and just cross your fingers and hope for the best. HACCP said no way. It's a proactive system that builds safety into the entire process to prevent problems from ever happening in the first place.
So how does this whole thing actually work? Well, the entire system is built on 7 core principles. You can think of these as the playbook, the step-by-step blueprint that any food producer has to follow to guarantee safety.
And here they are, all 7 of them. We're going to walk through these one by one. It all starts with analyzing the hazards. Then, you pinpoint your critical control points, set clear limits for them, and monitor them like a hawk. And then you need a plan for corrective actions, a way to verify it's all working. And of course, you've got to document everything. Let's jump in with Principle 1.
Okay, Principle 1 is where you put on your detective hat. You look at every single step of the process, from the moment raw ingredients walk in the door to the final product going out, and you ask, what could possibly go wrong here? Could the raw milk be contaminated? Could that cutting machine accidentally shed a tiny metal fragment? You have to identify every single potential danger.
So once you know what all the potential hazards are, you find what are called the critical control points, or CCPs. These are the absolute make or break moments in the process. A CCP is a point where you must apply control to get rid of a hazard. Think about the cooking step that kills bacteria. That's a CCP. Or the metal detector on the packing line that spots foreign objects, another CCP. These are the steps you absolutely positively cannot get wrong.
Now, for every single one of those CCPs, you need a critical limit. And this is not some vague guideline, okay? It is a hard, measurable rule. It's the bright line that separates safe from unsafe. For example, the critical limit for cooking chicken isn't just cook it well. It's cook it to a minimum internal temperature of 75 degrees Celsius. See, it's specific. It's measurable, and it is non-negotiable.
Having a rule is one thing, but you have to make sure it's actually being followed. And that's where monitoring comes in. This is all about constant vigilance. It means someone is actively checking that those critical limits are being met. Maybe using a thermometer for every single batch of chicken, or doing hourly checks on the metal detector to make sure it's working perfectly.
But what if something goes wrong? What if the oven temperature dips for a minute? That's where Principle 5 is so crucial. This is your what-if plan. Before a problem ever happens, you've already decided exactly what you're going to do about it. Maybe you recook the product, or you hold the entire batch for more testing, or you just reject it completely. There's no scrambling, no panic, just a clear, pre-planned response.
Principle 6 is all about taking a step back and asking, is our whole system actually working the way we designed it to? This is verification. It involves things like doing internal audits, sending out final products for lab testing, and regularly calibrating your thermometers and sensors to make sure your measurements are accurate. It's basically the ultimate double check on your entire plan.
And finally, the golden rule of quality and safety. If it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. Principle 7 is all about documentation. Every check, every temperature reading, every single corrective action, all of it gets recorded. These records are the hard proof that the safety plan is being followed day in and day out.
So that's the theory behind the 7 principles. But what does all of this look like in practice, inside an actual food facility? How do all these pieces really come together?
Well, first, and this is super important, you have to understand that HACCP doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It has to be built on a solid foundation of what are called prerequisite programs. I mean, think about it. You can't control a critical cooking point if the whole factory is dirty or pests are running around. This foundation includes the basics, like good pest control, proper personal hygiene for staff, and solid cleaning procedures. Without these, the whole system just falls apart.
This chart gives a great simple example. Let's take bread making. You've got a potential hazard of contaminated flour, right? Well, that's controlled by only using approved, trusted suppliers. What about foreign objects? You control for that with a sieve when you're mixing the dough. The baking step itself, that's a huge critical control point for killing off bacteria, and it's managed with a very specific time and temperature. And then at the very end, a metal detector at packing acts as one last CCP. Every potential hazard has a specific, planned control. It's brilliant.
Now, you might hear HACCP mentioned in the same breath as something called ISO 22000 and wonder, what's the difference? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Think of HACCP as a super focused tool for keeping the product safe. ISO 22000 is a much broader management system for the entire company. It includes all the principles of HACCP, but it also covers things like company leadership and long-term planning. So, HACCP is a vital part of ISO 22000.
Of course, just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's perfect. Things can definitely go wrong with implementation. Some common mistakes are just treating it like a paperwork exercise instead of a living, breathing system. Or, and this is a big one, identifying way too many critical control points, which just dilutes your focus from what really matters. And if your team isn't disciplined about monitoring and keeping records, well, the whole structure can fail. A plan is only as good as its execution, right?
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway here. The safety and the quality of the food that we all rely on every single day, it's not an accident. It's not luck. It is the direct result of a deliberate, scientific, and systematic plan.
So, the next time you sit down to enjoy a meal without giving its safety a second thought, maybe you'll remember this incredible, invisible system working behind the scenes. And it kind of makes you wonder, what other invisible systems are out there, quietly and effectively protecting us in our daily